Hello everyone, and today we're going to be talking about one of the most famous Batman graphic novels of all time, The Dark Knight Returns. Published in 1986, this is a 4-part miniseries. This take on the character of Batman was written by legendary comic book writer Frank Miller, as well as illustrated by him and Klaus Janson. And for the people living in the 1980s, this was the graphic novel series that made people take Batman seriously again. For a long time leading up until this point, the character of Batman was seen as very campy, very cheesy. When most people thought of Batman in those times, they would think of like Adam West, that kind of portrayal of the character. Not saying there's anything wrong with Adam West Batman. I actually really enjoyed that series. But this is the series that made people take the idea of Batman seriously again and paved the way for the majority of Batman IP going forward. Most notably in the present day, a lot of elements of the story of The Dark Knight Returns, or at least ideas and concepts from it, was adapted into Zack Snyder's Batman vs. Superman, which controversial take, but I actually really liked that movie. I know it had its problems. I can think of a few of them off the top of my head right now, but that was the movie that made me fall in love with the character of Batman. I didn't really care much for the character up until that point, but now today he is easily my favorite hero of all time, and not in the he just liked me for real. This character deals with a lot of very real things, very real issues, and I just really appreciate that, and I love seeing a guy dressed in a really cool batsuit just destroy a warehouse full of people. I love the way Ben Affleck played his portrayal of Batman, and a lot of influence in what the character ended up being, specifically in that movie, was taken from The Dark Knight Returns. Not specific story elements, but in terms of costume design and some of the aspects of his character. There was a lot borrowed from the story of The Dark Knight Returns, but not fully. I'm getting sidetracked a little bit, but this is something that I'm really passionate about. Batman is one of my favorite characters ever. And much like in Batman v Superman, Batman and Superman do fight in this story, but the reasons for why they fight in the comic are a lot more impactful, and I think that it's something that was lost in translation. The reasons not only make sense, and we'll talk about those reasons, but they make the fight at the end much more impactful. And one other thing that you should know about this story is I want there to be a live-action remake of this so bad. There's been a precedent set in the past for live-action adaptations of comics, like the Watchmen movie with Zack Snyder, albeit he did take some creative liberties with the finale, but other than that, it's quite a close adaptation from the graphic novel to screen, and this comic would make an amazing movie. Warner Brothers, James Gunn, hi. I want to direct a Dark Knight Returns movie or pair of movies so bad. Please hear me out. Watch these videos and hear me out. There were, of course, 2 animated movies adapting this story, The Dark Knight Returns Parts 1 and 2, and those are really good. I recommend watching those. But I would love to bring this story into live action. And I'm not just saying that, Mr. Gunn. I'm a graduated film student. I've directed projects before. Filmmaking is my passion, and I would love to put this story on the big screen. All right, enough shilling. Let's talk about the story. The story of The Dark Knight Returns is about a worn down and aged Batman coming out of retirement, and he is made to face a world that doesn't want him anymore, and also confront the plethora of evils that are awakened by his return. He is back on the streets with a vengeance. No catch and release this time. He is out to break his enemies so they never get up again. This is the story that we are going to be talking about, The Dark Knight Returns. And in setting out to record this video, I started taking notes on the story, thinking that this was going to have to be a two-part series, because there's a lot of content to cover. But when I got through the first of this four-part series, I had so many notes that this was already going to be such a long recording. So what I'm going to have to do is split this series of videos up into 4 sections, this being the first of those 4. Each video will cover a different issue of the mini-series, and then once I have concluded with the finale, then I will release on this channel a kind of super cut, a long version that people can watch that is a compilation of all 4 of these videos. I just wanted to get that disclaimer out of the way. This is not going to be the entire story. This is just the beginning. But I hope you stick around for the ride, and I hope you enjoy this video. If you end up enjoying it, hit the like button and subscribe. It does really help this channel. I've been wanting to tell stories like this and hopefully make something work on social media for a while now. So if you enjoy the video, then liking, sharing, subscribing, all of that, it would really help to build up this channel into something that I could possibly do more. But with that out of the way, let's get into the actual story of The Dark Knight Returns, which the first issue of the series is called The Dark Knight Returns, so the title isn't clickbait. I do want to give a few disclaimers as well. The first being a major spoiler warning. I'm going to be going over the events of the comic in detail, so if you want to read the graphic novel for yourself first, I would recommend doing that and then coming to watch this video. Or if you're like me and you want a sneak peek at what a story actually is before you invest the money into buying it, then I hope that this will be a persuasive enough video for you to consider buying this book for yourself. The other disclaimer I want to give is a content warning. This graphic novel, while really good, it is marketed towards adults and contains a lot of adult themes, lots of extreme acts of violence. There is discussion of like horrific crimes, horrific violence, sexual assault. So it does get pretty heavy in certain sections, but I think that this story handles these topics in a way that they are taken seriously, but they are also not glorified. I think the actual source material is very respectful around these very sensitive topics, but if these topics are something that you just don't want to interact with at all today or ever, then this might not be the video for you. Or if you think you can handle it later, then you can save the video and come back. Those are the two big things, but I do also want to give general background of the world that this comic book takes place in. There are certain details that are never expressly said, but are heavily implied, and I think it would just be better if you, the audience, had that prior knowledge before we get to certain parts of the story that heavily imply at certain things. So I'm going to give you some of the background as to the world and the events that have taken place that led up to where we start in the story. The first thing to note is that this comic does take place during the Cold War. The graphic novel was released in 1986, so it makes sense that the story would take place in that time. Specifically, this is during the presidency of Ronald Reagan, so this is like that era of the Cold War. Another thing that is mentioned in dialogue in this book is that at one point there was a Justice League in this universe. We don't know how many people were a part of this Justice League, but we do know that some of the members included Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Green Arrow. Those are the only ones that we expressly know about. And this Justice League operated over a decade before the events of this novel. So they were a team doing stuff and fighting crimes, whatever they did, in the 70s and before that. Actually, the 60s, sorry. There's a gap in the 70s where nothing was happening. And certain members of the public, particularly parents groups, strongly disapproved of these superpowered vigilantes kind of being able to just go and do whatever they want with impunity. It also says in this book that Batman was the main thing they would point to when talking about why the Justice League is so dangerous, because his methods in particular were very shocking and brutal, to the point that they would turn and point to him as the reason that this cannot be allowed. And it escalated to such a degree that the US government threatened to put an end to the entire Justice League, likely through nuclear force, because it's that time. And so a deal is struck. The US government will not go after the Justice League, but in turn, all the members of the Justice League have to go quiet and retire. Everyone goes back to their homes and lives out the rest of their lives and doesn't get involved in any political government business, like fighting crime or anything. Another condition of this deal is that Superman will officially become an agent of the US Army to be deployed wherever he is needed. Basically, they just want to have this superpowered being that cannot be killed on their side against the Soviets. In a Cold War where two countries are kind of pointing the nukes at each other, the US wants another ace in the hole that will give them an advantage in case Russia decides to pull something. And this deal was not met with enthusiasm on part of many of the Justice League members, Green Arrow being one of the vocal people who was against this deal. And apparently the struggle got so intense and so heated that it ended with Superman ripping off Green Arrow's arm. Yeah, it got really bad. Batman also did not go peacefully and continued to operate in Gotham for some time before, tragically, Jason Todd, his Robin in this universe, died in the line of duty. And in his grief and remorse, Bruce finally hangs up the cape. And it has now been 10 years since those events. Batman is gone, and Gotham is rampant with crime. Superman is now President Reagan's personal puppet against the Soviets, and the world as a whole is in utter turmoil without the Justice League, or more generally, without superheroes. And this world is where we begin our story. The story starts with Bruce Wayne at the wheel of a race car. He's nearly at the finish line, but the car is starting to lose control. The car's instruments and meters are screaming at him, telling him to stop. He's taxing the engine too hard. And so in response, he just rips a bunch of wires out. For once in the last 10 years, so close to this fiery destruction, he feels in control. The car's front digs into the pavement, and he's sent into a fireball of wreckage. And in his mind, he says this would be a very good death for him, but not good enough. And in a news broadcast afterwards, we are told that he bailed out at the last second and escaped unharmed with superficial injuries. So I guess not totally unharmed, but what's a cut, right? We then cut to the rest of the morning news segment. It's important to note here, a lot of this story takes place through the medium of television. I think this graphic novel also serves as a commentary on the impact of mass media on public opinion. In this age, it would have been television. Nowadays, you could say electronics and phones and stuff, but in the 80s, television was the big thing. We are told in this news broadcast that a massive heat wave is sparking numerous acts of violence all over the city. And we are also introduced to a gang known as the Mutants. They are a very large and very violent gang in Gotham City at this time. And we are told in this broadcast that they are officially responsible for the murder of 3 nuns. And a death threat has been nailed to the door of Police Commissioner Gordon. At 70 years old and only a few weeks from retirement, he is more than happy to take on this threat. And, conveniently enough for the story, today also marks the 10-year anniversary of the last known sighting of the Batman. It is unclear to the public whether he retired or whether he is dead at this point. And another way to show just how long it's been since his time, a lot of the younger generation in a survey believes that Batman was just an outright myth and that he never existed. And his crusade on crime is still a very polarizing topic to this day. Not because of the acts itself, but his methods, which, as we're going to see in this book, are very violent. We then cut to Commissioner Jim Gordon and Bruce Wayne sitting down and having a drink. It is revealed in this conversation that Gordon knows that Bruce is Batman. It's likely that he's known all of this time or found out during his original crusade as the Batman and decided it was best for the city if he keep it under wraps. Bruce says that the Batman is officially dead at this point, but Bruce managed to somehow survive the retirement. And we also find out in conversation that Bruce has not spoken to Dick Grayson in 7 years. Dick Grayson, of course, for aficionados of Batman, being the original Robin. And in this conversation, Gordon mentions Jason and what a tragedy it was that he had to go that way. And Bruce at this point stands and says, "Let's call it a night." Not feeling like driving home, he decides to walk the streets of Gotham instead. I can't stress enough to you how much the art style of this comic conveys the mood of Gotham, almost more than the actual visuals itself. The art style is very chaotic, very desaturated. It's very gloomy and very visceral, which really paints the image of not only the landscape of Gotham itself, but the emotion and the climate of Gotham. A lot of the dialogue in this comic is also delivered through internal monologue. We are privy to thoughts that are never given voice in the actual book itself, and as he's walking the streets, Bruce thinks this to himself. As we part, Jim squeezes my shoulder and grins. "You just need a woman," he says. While in my gut, the creature writhes and snarls and tells me what I need. I leave my car in the lot. I can't stand to be inside anything right now. I walk the streets of this city I'm learning to hate, the city that's given up, like the whole world seems to have. I'm a zombie, a flying Dutchman, a dead man, 10 years dead. I'll feel better in the morning. At least, I'll feel it less. It's the night. The city's smells call out to him, though I lie between silk sheets and $1 million mansion miles away. When a police siren wakes me, and for a moment I forget that it's all over. But Batman was a young man. If it was revenge he was after, he's taken it. And in his walking and in his brooding, he stops underneath a lamppost in an alleyway. The same lamppost that 40 years ago his parents were shot under. And in his head he grimly thinks about how the place looks exactly the same as it did on that day. It could have happened just yesterday. His parents could be laying there bleeding out right now, and their killer could be standing right in front of him. As if on cue, 2 members of the mutant gang come out of the shadows with their knives drawn. And in his internal monologue in this scene, we hear 2 conflicting voices inside his head. One of the voices is screaming for blood. It sees these mutant thugs as just like the man who murdered his parents, and he knows so many ways that he could hurt them back. One of the mutants says that the other should jump him, but he hesitates. There's something about the look in Bruce's eye. It's almost like he wants them to try something. Specifically in his mind, it says this: "It is him, it is. And we know so many ways to hurt him. So many lovely ways to punish him. No, it's not him. So many. No, not him. He flinched when he pulled the trigger. He was sick and guilty over what he did. All he wanted was money. I was naive enough to think him the lowest sort of man." At this point, the two mutants get skittish and abandon the mugging entirely. But the internal monologue is still raging on in Bruce's head. As he curls up into a ball and kneels in front of this fence post, his mind continues with this. All he wanted was money. I was naive enough to think him the lowest sort of man. But these are his children, a purer breed, and this world is theirs. He crumples to the ground in despair at this new generation of criminals that seemingly are sociopathic. They commit crime because it's fun, not out of necessity or fear or need. They attack people because it feels good. We then cut to more news, where we find out that the mutant gang killed an entire family, all over $12. And on top of this, the heat wave is getting worse, and so public agitation is steadily increasing. And in more recent news, the mutant gang stapled a dead cat to the door of a church. These new criminals, this new generation, are soulless and seemingly unstoppable at this point. Over half the news that is reported in Gotham daily is about the atrocities that the mutants are committing every single day. And seemingly the GCPD can't do anything about it. And it is then that we cut to the intensive treatment ward of Arkham's home for the mentally troubled. Emotionally troubled, sorry. Two doctors pass by the room of patient 601, who is staring blankly ahead, almost catatonic. They express unease looking at him. This solitary figure who's just staring straight ahead gives them a lot of unease. And this character, patient 601, is none other than the Joker. It seems after Batman left, he had no reason to keep doing what he was doing, and so we find him in the state that we see him in now. Next door, three voices are heard coming out of patient 602's room. The first voice we hear is that of Dr. Wolper, a clinical psychiatrist, one of the best in the world. And the other is that of Dr. Willing, who is a world-famous plastic surgeon. And the two of them, the psychiatrist and the plastic surgeon, are standing in front of possibly their greatest triumph ever. And that is Harvey Dent. Those of you who may not have read comics but are familiar with the Batman movies will recognize Harvey Dent from The Dark Knight, the one whose face got half scarred. But now, thanks to the efforts of both the best psychiatrist and plastic surgeon in the world, both his mind and body are now completely healed. And for the first time in 10 years, the bandages come off and he's given a mirror and he looks at his newly repaired face. And he begins to cry and thank the doctors for what they've done. The doctors also mention in their conversation that Commissioner Gordon does not approve of what they've done. Obviously, he thinks that Harvey will always just be a bad guy because that's who he is. And they kind of take shots at Gordon, calling him old and senile. He doesn't know what he's talking about. We're so great. We are the mighty doctors who repaired Harvey Dent. They both kind of have an ego on them, if you couldn't tell. And obviously, this triumph of medicine makes the news. And it's here that we get a little bit of background into his story leading up to this moment. In a news broadcast, they talk about how Harvey Dent was the former district attorney for Gotham City. And after half his face was severely scarred by acid, he lost his mind. He became obsessed with the number 2, and in a failed hostage situation, Batman managed to apprehend him, and now he has spent the last 12 years in Arkham. Dent reads a very brief public statement where he commits himself to public service as a sort of payment for the atrocities he's committed over the years. And as a really great PR move, he holds up a coin for the cameras, but both sides are completely intact, just like him. Gordon, of course, as we've already heard from the two doctors, is not convinced. And he goes as far as calling Dr. Wolper optimistic and sloppy. Millionaire Bruce Wayne is also interviewed on the same subject. He calls Gordon's response very pessimistic and rude. And he chooses to believe in Harvey Dent, specifically saying, we must believe that our private demons can be defeated. He's choosing to have hope that Harvey can change and that he can move past the monster that he was. But this sentiment also has a double meaning. As we've seen, he still battles with a monster inside of him that wants release. And so in this statement, he's also saying that he hopes that he can overcome his own demons. We'll see how that goes for him later. It's now nighttime, and as Bruce Wayne sleeps in his bed, we see the giant shadow of a bat pass over the moon. Bruce is dreaming, and in his dream, he is 6 years old again, and he's chasing a rabbit. His parents yell after him not to run down the hole that the rabbit just ran into. But being 6 and a boy, he does it anyways. The hole collapses and Bruce falls from a great height into a cave, injuring himself in the process. Immediately, a swarm of bats surrounds him and encircles him. But suddenly, they all fly away, and a much larger shadow presents itself. Then, something shuffles out of sight. Something sucks the stale air and hisses. Gliding with ancient grace, unwilling to retreat as his brothers did. Eyes gleaming, untouched by love or joy or sorrow. Breath hot with the taste of fallen foes. The stench of dead things. Damned things. Surely the fiercest survivor. The purest warrior, glaring, hating, claiming me as his own. This giant, almost demonic figure of a bat is something that we will see again. This figure is representative of the primal soul of Batman, that monster in his chest that begs to be released. A creature that has been long dormant in his soul, but is beginning to stir again. And now fully awake, Bruce is in his cave, the Bat Cave, the very same cave that he fell into all those years ago. It is now very old and gathering dust, just like him. I've never actually mentioned up until this point, but he's 55 years old in this story. He's 55. The beast inside him mocks him and curses him constantly. It tricks him into coming here at night when his resolve is weak. But he made a vow, he swore after the death of Jason. Never again. It is here that Alfred enters the cave, and we get the first dialogue from his butler in this comic, where he says,
Master Bruce, you set off the alarm, sir. This somnambulism is becoming a bit of a problem. Certainly for those of us with a penchant for sleeping in our beds.
He's very sweet but very sarcastic in this story. We love Alfred. Bruce begins to leave the cave, and as he steps into the light, Alfred remarks that he's shaved his mustache. Bruce, touching his fingers to his lip, is almost shocked that the mustache is gone too. It seems he didn't even realize that he had shaved it either. Not being able to sleep, he sits in front of his TV, where we find out that Harvey Dent has officially been reported missing, and Commissioner Gordon, in a panic, has issued an APB. And now we cut to a room full of old associates of Two-Face, who are reminiscing on the glory days of the crimes they committed together and playing cards. It is then that a new figure enters the room. He is wearing bandages over his face, and in his hand he contains a half-defaced coin. It seems, after all the efforts of the psychiatrist and the plastic surgeon, Harvey Dent has relapsed. Bruce, unable to sleep, is sitting in front of his TV drinking a glass of wine. Before Alfred retires, he delivers this zinger.
That'll be all, Master Bruce? I'm hoping the next generation of the Wayne family shan't face an empty wine cellar. Although, given your social schedule of late, the prospects of there being a next generation...
And Bruce cuts him off, and it's really funny. I love Alfred. Flipping through channels, he sees that a movie is on. An old Hollywood classic, The Mark of Zorro. Oh, my light died. Well, this is gonna be interesting. Hang on. They try to get me down, but joke's on them. I have another light. Who's they? I don't know. The demons that keep causing frame drops on my streams. Bruce remarks that at this point he should change the channel, but something tells him to stop and forces him to watch. He flashes back to the night as a boy where he saw this movie for the first time, the same night that his parents lost their lives. And now he's a boy again, pretending to fight with a sword just like the hero in the film that he just watched. And as he does, the giant figure of a bat eclipses the moon once more. His father suddenly grabs his shoulder and pulls his son behind him. Bruce looks up and he's staring directly into the barrel of a gun. His father clenches his fist and lunges at the man, who panics and fires his gun. His father crumples to the ground. His mother also grapples the man, trying to get him away from her son, but unfortunately the barrel of the gun finds its way underneath her chin. The man fires, and the strength of the blast shatters the pearl necklace that she was wearing. And while Bruce is reliving this memory, on the news they are talking about a recent child abduction that's happened in the city. He rapidly clicks through channels trying to find something, anything to distract him from this memory. But all the news is talking about are mass killings and mutilations and rapes that is being committed by the mutant gang. Actually, I probably can't say that word on YouTube. All right, editing me. Go back and replace what I said with this. Grapes. He finally flips to a channel that's not talking about the violence in the city. They are covering a massive storm system that is rolling into Gotham, but the damage has already been done. Bruce turns off the TV. The look in his eyes is murderous. And in this moment of weakness and frustration with the world around him, the voice comes back and begins to speak to him. The time has come. You know it in your soul, for I am your soul. You cannot escape me. Bruce stumbles out of the room, toppling a statue that was behind him that is 3 times his size and made of marble. Bruce stands in the shower trying to cool his head, but the voice continues to speak to him. You are puny. You are small. You're nothing. A hollow shell. A rusty trap that cannot hold me. Smoldering, I burn you. Burning you, I flare hot and bright and fierce and beautiful. Desperate to rid himself of the monster that's steadily going stronger and stronger, feeding off of his turmoil, he tries to punch himself repeatedly in the shower, trying to quell the beast that's rising out of him. But it's to no avail. You cannot stop me, not with wine or vows or the weight of age. You cannot stop me, but still you try, still you run. I love this scene, not only because it's so cinematic and would be amazing in a live-action film, but because it portrays the persona of Batman in a way that I think few media pieces have, and that is it portrays him as an addiction. When Bruce is alone and weak and his walls are collapsing around him, that is when the beast comes back to break down those walls and assert itself as king once more. Desperate to drown the voice out, Bruce goes to his desk to listen to his answering machine. He has 3 missed calls on the line. One is from Harvey Dent, who thanks Bruce for the second chance that he's given him. Although tragically for us, we know that he's already relapsed, and it's too late. The second message is from Clark Kent, who tells Bruce that he's going to be out of town for a few weeks. At this, Bruce straightens up, as if the one thing that could have possibly held him back from what he's about to do was suddenly gone from the equation. And the last is from Selena Kyle, telling Bruce that she's feeling lonely right now, which gives us a little hint as to the relationship between the two at this particular moment. I'm not going to talk about it, but I think the implication is there. Bruce closes his eyes, surrendering. The time has come. He couldn't hold back the monster anymore. He opens his eyes, and the giant demonic form of a bat crashes through the window, screeching its primal cry. Outside, as the weatherman says, a mighty storm like the wrath of God himself is rolling over Gotham. And as we'll come to find out, this couldn't be more accurate. We then cut to a woman who's walking home alone in the rain, carrying a bag of groceries. And standing in front of one of the doors on the street, a door that has one of those big glass panes on the top of it, stands a man who is staring at her. The man grabs her and pulls her in. The dialogue that he says, which I'm definitely not going to read, implies that he's about to grape her. He pulls out a knife and lifts it. To do what, we don't get the chance to find out. Before anything happens, two massive gloved hands burst through the window behind him. One of them grabs the wrist of the knife hand. The other hand grabs his mouth so that he can't scream. With almost supernatural strength, the hands lift him up and pull him through the window, kicking all the way. The woman is left to stare at the empty doorway in awe and horror. And as the storm rages on overhead, a pimp throws one of his women into the back of a taxi and begins attacking her face with a knife. The driver immediately begins protesting, but the man called Silk hands him a huge wad of cash, and he stops complaining and continues to let the assault happen. Suddenly, a huge thud comes from the roof of the taxi. Silk rolls down his window and points a gun out the window. But a huge boot comes crashing down from the roof of the car, putting Silk's wrist right through the window of the car. He continues to struggle with this unseen assailant until we hear a loud crack and Silk's body goes limp. And then a huge gloved hand reaches into the driver's side window, grabs the giant wad of bribe money from Silk, and shreds the bills to pieces while the driver watches. We then cut to two kids named Carrie and Michelle who are cutting through the Gotham City arcade to get home faster. And then all the lights go out and three members of the mutant gang come out of the shadows and begin catcalling the two. And then perched on the overhead arcade sign, we see the shape of a massive cape looming over them, but still unseen in the darkness. In a raised fist are 4 shurikens that are shaped to look like bats. One of the mutants raises a machete to attack the girls, but we hear the sound of 4 impacts in rapid succession. As a flash of lightning illuminates the scene, we see that those same 4 projectiles are now embedded all the way up this man's arm. He screams wildly in pain. Another mutant grabs his gun, but is immediately seized by this unseen figure in the darkness and thrown with almost superhuman strength into the sign above, which immediately sends an arcade's worth of volts through the man's body. We cut to a news broadcast where a reporter is handed an urgent news bulletin. This bulletin claims that a giant bat-like creature was seen in the south side of Gotham, and in addition to the people that we've seen, 3 other cat burglars were apprehended with severe injuries. Another reporter says that the children who were abducted have been found safely. Another reporter says that the children who were abducted were officially found unharmed, and that their captors were rushed to the hospital in critical condition. It would seem that the monster's back, and he's already making up for lost time. And now, Gotham's security trust has been robbed, and a squad car has been dispatched to the scene. 2 cars flee the scene, a brand new custom job and an old jalopy. The 2 cars split up, and the cops follow the custom job, assuming this to be the perpetrators. We then cut to another broadcast that officially states that all of these reportings that we're seeing have been officially declared a one-man siege on crime by the Batman. As the title says, the Dark Knight has returned. Although all eyewitnesses agree on what they saw, Gordon has made no statement. While the 2 cops are in pursuit of this car, the rookie in the passenger seat looks up and swears that he sees something overhead. After a while, the much older, more experienced cop in the driver's seat looks up and sees a very familiar sight. There he is. Batman descends upon the car in all of his glory. This should be agony. I should be a mass of aching muscles, broken, spent, unable to move. And were I an older man, I surely would. But I'm a man of 30, of 20 again. The rain on my chest is a baptism. I'm born again. I mentioned in passing how much the costume design in The Dark Knight Returns influenced what Ben Affleck's Batman would wear and what he would look like. And you can really see it on full display here. Granted, he's in like the classic blue-gray with the yellow chest logo suit, but we see him as this massive hulking figure in a fibrous suit, not a suit of armor like some other portrayals of Batman. And later on in this story, he will adopt a costume that's much more similar to what we see in Batman v Superman, but you can see the visual parallels already. And I love this costume design. It looks so good. He's not a skinny, elusive Batman. He's a hulking brawler Batman, and he is out for blood. Batman lands on the hood of the car and his cape obscures the windshield, so the driver begins to lose control. In this moment, he says, "I smell their fear, and it is sweet." Losing control completely, the car crashes into an abandoned construction site. The cops pull up to the scene and get out of the car. The old man, he's experienced with Batman and he knows the drill, but the rookie is new and inexperienced. Batman turns to the two of them and says, "These men are mine," and he runs into the abandoned construction site. The old man complies, but the rookie runs in after him. Inside, Batman assesses the situation. There are 4 men in total, 3 in the construction site and 1 in the car nursing a broken leg. The 3 are now on the 2nd floor. They are armed and they are sticking close together. He pulls out a grappling hook and throws it around a piece of pipe that suspends itself above the 2nd floor. He begins to climb. In his youth, he said he had the strength to climb these ropes with nothing but his arms pulling him up. But now, at the age of 55, he needs the use of his legs to pull himself up. The pipe starts to bend. The sound alerts the thugs, who immediately open fire in the direction of the sound. Abandoning this attempt, Batman drops back to the ground. Meanwhile, the thugs upstairs begin to hear growling and scratching noises underneath them, as if there's some wild animal that's loose underneath. This makes them really nervous because he's starting to make sounds, and he never used to make sounds. They're unsure what this means, but it's probably not good. It's then that Batman's hand bursts through the floor that they're standing on, grabs the ankle of one of the thugs, and pulls him through the floor. I think, as a concept, this tactic is terrifying. Normally, to feel safe, you put a barrier between yourself and a threat, and that will provide you with some sense of security. But Batman, with all of these criminals he's encountering, barriers are not an issue. He takes his hand, puts it through solid construction material, and pulls a man through it, kicking and screaming. That is terrifying. The remaining 2 open fire in this newly opened hole, but unfortunately they only succeed in shooting their partner. As one of them kneels over the hole, a grappling hook wraps around his neck, and he is pulled through the hole and into the black abyss below. The last man, in a blind panic, walks down the stairs to the 1st floor to confront their attacker. As the thug gets closer and closer to Batman's position, so too does the rookie cop, who immediately yells for everyone to freeze, pulling his gun. To save the 2 from each other, Batman knocks the rookie cop to the floor and disarms him. Playing the shadows, he forces the thug to get close, real close, to the point where the barrel of this man's shotgun is less than an inch from the back of Batman's head. There are 7 working defenses from this position. 3 of them disarm with minimal contact. 3 of them kill. And the other hurts. His leg lashes out behind him in full force, making contact with the thug's hip, which cracks underneath the force of this blow. Now the rookie is back and he's retrieved his firearm. "You're under arrest, mister. You've crippled that man. He's young. He'll probably walk again. But he'll stay scared, won't you, punk?" The thug is now on the floor, screaming in pain, and Batman begins looting his pockets for evidence. The rookie threatens to shoot him, but the old cop arrives and stops him. He says Batman's being patient with you as it is, and he also says to Batman that it's good to have him back. In the thug's pocket, he finds cigarettes, a bottle of pills, and a coin, but now both sides are completely defaced. Batman asks them if there was a second car at the scene, and they say there was.
At the bank, was there a second car? Car? Yeah, an old jalopy. Didn't think you weren't supposed to.
See, this was Two-Face's old MO. He always operated in twos. One good side, one bad side. One new car, one old car. And the bank job matches his MO perfectly. Batman tells the officer that him and Gordon need to talk, and he runs away from the scene. Meanwhile, the news of Batman's return is all over the TVs, including at Arkham's home for the emotionally troubled. The Joker's catatonic body has been placed in front of the TV as some form of entertainment. But at the mention of Batman, he begins to stir. He struggles to speak, but soon his mouth stretches into this hideous grin, and he utters the first words he's said in 10 years. Batman, darling. I like this scene because the whole time he's waking up, the TV is discussing the topic of Batman. Specifically, there's a person on the TV who's condemning Batman's actions, calling him psychotic and just a threat to everyone in Gotham. But as we are being given the visual of the Joker slowly waking up, we are meant to apply these labels that people are putting on Batman onto the Joker. It's great visual storytelling, and I love it. Specifically what they're calling Batman and us are subsequently calling the Joker. The only thing he signifies is an aberrant psychotic force. Morally bankrupt, politically hazardous, reactionary, paranoid, a danger to every citizen of Gotham. And I'll say right now, this is one of the darkest versions of the Joker I have ever seen or read. This Joker is terrifying in almost a completely different way than any other version of the character I've seen. And we'll get to that in later installments of this series. But all you need to know for now is that he is psychotic, he has no conscience, and he is very, very dangerous. We then fully cut to what we were hearing on the TV, which was a debate show that was discussing the return of Batman. A guy named Maury is on there denouncing Batman, claiming him to be a social fascist. Meanwhile, a woman called Lana Lang is voicing support for Batman and his war on crime. The host cuts them both off, saying they're out of time, and also makes a comment on how Two-Face is officially suspected in the Gotham bank robbery from that night. At GCPD headquarters, Commissioner Gordon is demanding that there be no more leaks to the press on what happened tonight. It appears the night's activities are causing a lot of stress around the department. And on top of that, the thug from last night whose hip Batman broke is in his office with his lawyer demanding to be released. And this is the exact dialogue that goes on between the two, because it's just... Gordon does not care one single ounce about this guy. Commissioner, if you please. Are you still here? My client has yet to be charged, Commissioner, and with good reason. Let's we drop this, Your client has been in and out of prison since he learned to walk. Your client fled the scene of a felony and fired on policemen with an illegal weapon. Where'd I put those cigars, Merkel? Top drawer.
No loot, no robbery, Commissioner. He has not been identified as having fired upon your men. And as for the weapon... Damn things will kill me. Talking about the cigars. Batman put it there during a criminal assault that left 2 men in deep shock, another in a body cast, and my client with a shattered femur. His physical and emotional trauma matches Merkel. Vest pocket. Should be enough to constrain you to hunt down that lunatic and cease his harassment of his victims. Can you hear me, Commissioner? Drop release papers for old femur here. Not until he's guaranteed protection. You heard me, Merkel.
Do you like the prop cigar? I thought it would be very effective. This is commissioner mode. The lawyer is obviously trying to get his client protection, presumably from the Batman, but Commissioner Gordon gives no such offer because he knows he can't protect him from Batman if he's who Batman wants. Which, if this were any other situation, we would probably be saying corrupt police letting stuff happen under the radar. But since it's Batman and since his quest is like actually good for the city, I'm going to allow it. Not that I have a say in where the story goes. Meanwhile, Bruce is in the Wayne Manor infirmary nursing his wounds from last night. At 55 years old, it took quite a toll on him. He is sore, stiff, and bruised and battered. Alfred is massaging out his back when Commissioner Gordon calls to tell Bruce that the thug he traumatized last night has been released. It's time for him to go to work again. Meanwhile, playing on the TV, we see a recorded message to the people of Gotham by the leader of the mutant gang. We will kill the old man Gordon. His women will weep for him. We will chop him. We will grind him. We will bathe in his blood. I myself will kill the fool Batman. I will rip the meat from his bones and suck them dry. I will eat his heart and drag his body through the street. Don't call us a gang. Don't call us criminals. We are the law. We are the future. Gotham City belongs to the mutants. Soon, the world will be ours. So, very big promises. The thug arrives at presumably Two-Face's base of operations. He is on crutches and in a neck brace, and Batman is there waiting for him. Batman slams the door behind him, and as he advances, the thug recoils and starts backing away. Your boss left. He knew I'd track him. If he is Harvey Dent, he's a menace to every life in Gotham. I know you're very concerned about that. Get away from me. You're gonna tell me everything you know sooner or later. If it's later, I won't mind. No, stay back. I got rights. In a panic, as he stumbles back, he falls through the window of the apartment, landing in the fire escape outside. On top of the injuries he sustained the night before, he is now cut up by the glass and bleeding. And it is here that we see this Batman's preferred method of interrogation, which is chilling. Yeah, you've got rights. Lots of rights. Sometimes I count them just to make myself feel crazy. But right now, you've got a piece of glass shoved into a major artery in your arm. Right now, you're bleeding to death. Right now, I'm the only one in the world who can get you to a hospital in time. And that's all he needs to say. The thug, understandably, chooses life and cooperation. We cut to Gordon, who is standing on the roof of the Gotham City Police Department beside the newly recommissioned Bat Signal. This is Gordon's official statement, his way of letting the people of Gotham and the criminal underworld all know at once. Batman is back. Meanwhile, Carrie, one of the girls that we saw during Batman's initial return, sticks her head out the window, trying to get away from the voices of her apathetic and very neglectful parents. She is one of the first to see the light of the Bat Signal strike the side of one of Gotham's twin towers. Yeah, I should mention, Gotham City has twin towers in this world. This was before 2001. And yes, this will be a problem later in the book. We then witness a conversation between Batman and Gordon on the roof of Gotham City Police Department. They're discussing the information he got from that thug he interrogated. Presumably, he said that whatever Harvey was planning was going to be twice as big as anything he'd ever done before. Twice as big as you can imagine. That's all he had to say? That's all he knew, Jim. But tomorrow is the 2nd. And a Tuesday. I'm gonna ditch the cigar. It's getting annoying trying to ping pong between two characters. So it's just a matter of figuring out what he's after. The payroll robbery was committed to sponsor it. Sponsor it? That doesn't make sense.
2 helicopters were stolen today. One a state-of-the-art military fighter, the other an old army surplus job. That's gotta be Dent's work. With that payroll, he could have bought them. Then it's gonna be a crime by air, using something else more costly. He's not careful, whoever he is. You still don't think it's Dent? I hope not. Harvey wrestled long and hard with his other side to have it devour him now. But if it is Harvey, we'll catch him. The trick will be to keep him alive. He's possessed, Jim. Out of control. I think he wants to die. We are talking about Harvey Dent. It shouldn't be difficult to find his target. Accessible by helicopter and twice as big. They then both simultaneously look up at Gotham's Twin Towers. See, I told you they predicted the future. Do I need to say it? I'm gonna say it. Harvey Dent is planning an attack from the air on Gotham City's Twin Towers. Build the Lego City police helicopter to stop him. I'm sorry. We then see a brief interview on the news with Dr. Wolper, the psychiatrist, where he says that while he still believes Harvey is innocent, that doesn't necessarily mean that he hasn't returned to crime. He essentially blames Batman for Harvey's response. His return, resurfacing trauma in Harvey, which causes him to revert to the way he was. But as we, the audience, know, but no one else knows, Harvey relapsed before Batman came back. So it seems this was unavoidable. We then cut to a man who is visiting the Joker in Arkham. As he slowly drags on a cigarette, the man tells the Joker that Harvey approached him about the possibility of him making him bombs for tomorrow. It's clear in the dialogue that this guy used to make bombs for the Joker and is still very loyal to him. In this moment, he's kind of like asking for Joker's permission or at least approval before he says yes to Harvey about building these bombs. And all Joker asks him at the end of this conversation is, "What kind of bombs?" And then the scene ends. Batman is perched on top of one of Gotham City's twin towers, watching the helicopters he's been watching for a while slowly get closer. He shifts his weight to prevent his legs from cramping and double checks that he has everything he needs. I like a lot of these little moments in the comic, these little moments that like remind us viewers that he is human and he is an older human. Like he has to shift his weight so that he doesn't cramp up, and he's double checking to make sure he has everything, almost the same way that you would check to make sure you have your phone and your wallet with you. In his bag, he has capsules of nerve gas, a freezing agent, grappling hooks, a stethoscope, and painkillers for himself. Because, like I said, he is old, and all of this activity is taking a toll on him. One of the choppers lands on the building that he's perched on, and the other just hovers in between the two buildings. The hovering chopper fires a missile that hits one of the towers. I'm trying so hard not to reference that, but it's referencing itself. It doesn't bring the tower down. It just knocks out a news station that is broadcasting at the time. Unfortunately, Batman can't focus on that right now. His attention is diverted to the helicopter that landed on the roof of the building he is on. He throws the nerve agent onto the roof, where it dispenses in front of all the thugs that just loaded out of the helicopter. This stuff has a name that's as long as your arm. It was developed by the military during one of our more contemptible wars. It concentrates a powerful stimulant to a section of the right hemisphere of your brain. A strong dose and you die of fright in 15 seconds. A light dose like this and you spend 20 or 30 minutes reliving your least favorite nightmare. The only after effects I've noticed is a marked aversion to guns, knives, and crime fighters. So it appears he has access to experimental military technology that they used in very sketchy enterprises in the past, which the US government wouldn't do that. Guantanamo Bay, MK Ultra, I've never heard of those. I spilled. With everyone incapacitated, he goes to the helicopter and opens the door, and sure enough, he finds a bomb inside.
While all of this is happening, the broadcast that was interrupted by the missile firing has been hijacked by Two-Face. His face is fully covered in bandages again. He demands $5 million, or else he will use the bomb to blow up both of Gotham's twin towers. You see what I mean about not wanting to reference that specific historical event, but it feels prophetic, and I don't like it. Using the freezing agent in his belt, Batman disarms the bomb. He then fires a grappling line at the tower across from him, and as he runs across the line to the other building, Harvey's men on that side begin firing at him. A shot hits him square in the chest, and he falls off the line and down to the street, and begins falling down to the streets of Gotham. It's then that we find out that he intentionally placed a bright yellow insignia on his chest as a target for people who would try to shoot him, because that is the most heavily armored part of his suit. He's literally directing their fire towards a place where he knows he can survive a hit, which is really cool. I like that. And while he states, like he did in the race car at the beginning, that this would be a great death, there are a lot of people counting on him, and he has to know if the person behind all of this, it really is Harvey. He fires another grappling line, which hits the leg of the helicopter that Harvey is on. Having no sense of self-preservation whatsoever, this bandaged man, who we know is Harvey, jumps out of the helicopter and begins free-falling towards Batman, firing shots at him all the while. Batman swings around and tackles him midair, sending the two of them through the window of one of the towers. He immediately disarms and dispatches Harvey before he can even say or do anything. The helicopter that he was on flies into the distance, where it promptly explodes. And as Batman says, leaving the world no poorer, 4 men die. And here in this dark building, Batman confronts Two-Face again.
Harvey? What are you so mad about, Bats? I've been a sport. You have to admit that I played along. And you took your joke about as far as it could go. Got the whole world to smile at me. Got them all to keep their lunches down when they saw my face, saying I was cured, saying I was fixed. Take a look. Have your laugh. I'm fixed, all right. At least both sides match. Have your laugh, Batman. Take a look. Take a look.
Batman in this moment realizes that Harvey's scars ran too deep. He closes his eyes, and all he can see is the hideous side of Two-Face. All he sees is a monster left. All he sees is a reflection. And this is where the first issue of this series ends, with 2 men in a dark room who, despite their best efforts, couldn't change who they are. And this is the end of issue 1, The Dark Knight Returns. I think from a storytelling perspective for this series, having Two-Face be the first villain in his rogues gallery that he clashes up against is a really good choice on the writer's part. In this story, he is a twisted mirror image of Batman. They both tried to change, but in the end, they now realize that they will always be monsters. Now, obviously, one is a terrorist, and the other is a vigilante who fights bad people. So there is a moral difference, but in terms of just like being an absolute like monster of what they do, they are both the same. This story for Batman is a test of identity, of finding who he is in this new world. And there will be many more tests that he will have to confront in further issues. This series, like I mentioned, is often just all lumped under the title of the first issue, The Dark Knight Returns. And in the next installment of this series, we will be discussing Book 2, The Dark Knight Triumphant. I sure hope you enjoyed this, and I hope that I'm doing this story some semblance of justice, because I love this story, and I would urge every single one of you watching this to enjoy the story for yourself. But with all that said, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you've stuck around this long, then please like the video and share it with people, and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more. It really does help, and it gets me one step closer to what I want to be doing, which is doing this with all of you. I would love to be able to turn this into something that I could do long term. And I hope you enjoyed the soundtrack that's been running throughout this entire video. I composed in the last couple days a few original pieces of music that scored this entire video. All of the music that you have heard was my own original work, and I will be releasing all of the tracks that you heard at the same time as this video goes up on my music channel, which is linked in the description below. And thank you so much to the patrons. Really appreciate all of your support. RD, Sean, Snowy, it means the world that you would support me in doing this and trying to make my dream come true of doing content like this full time. And if you want to become a patron yourself and support the content in exchange for some bonus content that is all outlined on my actual page, you can check the link that is also in the description. And yeah, consider supporting there. And thank you so much for the love recently on the last few videos. We are approaching 400 subscribers. We are so close. And after that, it's just going to be one milestone after another. I hope you're all excited for the journey that we are starting off on, because I know that I am. Also, watch my short film that's on my main channel. It'll be on one of these sides here. Don't Let It In. Really good short horror film. I won Best Director for it at a film festival, so if you'd check it out, it would mean the world to me. But with that, I'm gonna go, and I will see you in the next video, which will be The Dark Knight Triumphant. We will pick up where this story leaves off. I hope you're excited for that, because I know that I am. And cut.